Hey, husband,
Yes, wife.
what part of the cheetah has the most spots?
What?
The outside.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Random Thoughts. I'm husband,
And I'm wife.
and we're here today to actually talk to you about Lightseekers, which is a game that we bring it up a lot, and we keep promising that we're going to do more content for it, and, wife, we haven't really followed through on that a whole lot.
No, there's been some life altering situations that has prevented us from doing it as much as we would like.
Yeah, speaking of life-altering situations, life-altering events, you want to elaborate on that briefly, wife, because it may impact this particular recording a little bit.
Yes, it may. So, we have a new addition to the Random Thoughts family. We have our little tiny edition who also happens to have the same name as another Lightseekers couple edition. So our edition is with us this evening and might be making some noise in the background if you hear her.
Yes, so if you hear any, you get the idea. If you hear anything in the background, please understand and bear with us. So we just wanted to get that out of the way just to prep everybody. So as I started out with, we wanted to and still want to produce more Lightseekers content in general, and really the timing kind of works out a little bit because we've been trying to do this effort. We have been streaming. If you take a look down there towards the bottom of this recording, you'll see all the different places that you can reach out to us. And, I've been live streaming Lightseekers for a while. Recently, not so much due to the aforementioned life-changing events. So,
Yes.
as I said, we do want to produce more. We're going to try and do this more regularly. We do want to try and do both recordings and live streams, and we'll kind of see how it goes. But the reason why I said that it's good timing is that, we have some cool stuff. Yeah, we have some cool stuff to talk about. And the reason for that is, despite the various delays, we're finally getting the first spoilers, the first teases of the next Lightseekers set, Uprising.
And they're all super exciting.
Well, are you excited, wife? So before we dive too far into it, into the spoilers, that is, we do want to talk about the current state of Lightseekers to some extent.
Yes.
So let me hand it over to you, wife. Obviously, we're not playing a lot of physical Lightseekers at the moment, but
no, we're not playing a lot of physical Lightseekers.
What are your thoughts on it at this stage?
Well, right now it's such a weird time to be a Lightseekers player, like both weird and exciting, because we have the game as we know it. A lot of rules changes have happened for this little interim period, I guess we can call it. Changing, how many cards you can play, what cards you can play, things like that. But then we're getting this new set, and with the new set coming in, a lot of old favorites are going out.
Right.
And it's going to be a completely different game than what we know it to be right now.
Absolutely. The rules, of course, are still, the deck construction rules are different, but the rules to actually how you play the game of Lightseekers are remaining the same.
Yes.
But as wife is describing, bottom line is that it's really hard to evaluate anything at this stage because we're getting a rotated format, a retired format, whatever verbiage you want to use, whether it's the official one, unofficial, from other games, whatever. Point being is that we're looking at something new and unique, and that's both exciting and scary because, you can't lean on the old standbys and go, I'll just throw Ancient Miners and Boulder Feasts and Exterior Defenders and whatever, and then I'll just, play the old favorites. You're going to have to come out of your shell a little bit, either literally or figuratively, depending on, which family you happen to choose.
Yeah. But I think it's exciting because, it's almost like back when we were at PAX Unplugged a few years ago, and we were building decks for the first time, and I came across Cora, which doesn't really work ever, but at the time it kind of worked. And it's that exciting new period of trying out new things
Yeah,
and building new decks. And I
mm-hmm.
don't know, it's like writing a new story.
Well, it's definitely a period of experimentation. Now we've hit my two least favorite parts of card games. That's spoiler season and the unknown metas. I always
Yes.
prefer when it's a known meta and I can say, oh, well, these are the top tier decks. And remember, we're coming at this from a more competitive standpoint. So these are the top tier decks, and here's what their strengths and weaknesses are. Here's how I want to attack them or defend against them or whatever. And this is my game plan. As it is right now, it's kind of a whole lot of homework because, well, who knows? This could be viable. That could be viable. Maybe that thing that we thought was great is now garbage or vice versa. And again, because it's going to be such a different format, it's very, very difficult to determine at this stage. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is, well, we're going to talk about these spoilers in a few moments. And as with any spoiler-centric thing, you always have to take everything with a grain of salt. Nobody knows, well, I guess except PlayFusion, knows what's the remainder of the set looks like. We don't even know what the next preview card's going to be. So every preview card could completely... And that's... So one thing that I want to touch on real briefly, but it's important, that for people who haven't played a lot of card games, and I know there's a lot of people out there with Lightseekers that fall into that group. So any given card, let's say the set's 150 cards. Not that Uprising is, but let's say it's 150 cards. And we know 148 of them. Mm-hmm. Those last two unknowns can still completely change a meta simply because they could either make an entire deck work, because maybe they're strong enough that that's a card you build a deck around, or they're cards that completely cripple a known deck. Therefore, either scenario will completely reshape the meta. So whatever thoughts we have today could very easily change by tomorrow when the next preview card comes out, let alone when we get the whole set.
Yeah, and that's both exciting and terrifying, I guess, would be a way to say it. Like, you're like,
well, way to steal my line, wife. Like, I only just said that a couple minutes ago.
I know, but I don't know how else to say it.
Well, it's true. It's accurate. Terrifying. It's absolutely accurate.
It's nerve-wracking. There, I chose my own word.
It's still the same sentiment.
Yeah, but no, it really is, and I'm verging on more excited. Well, I'm mostly excited.
Well, it is that exciting time of year. We're going to have new packs to crack. We're going to have new strategies to try and create.
I miss opening packs.
I do not. Wife handles all the pack opening. So, like I said, I wanted to preface our spoiler reviews with, not to be the wet blanket, but to temper it a little bit, because let's face it, we don't know. These are just our freshest, hottest takes, because that's the cool thing to do. So, without much further ado, any other thoughts on waxing philosophical about Lightseekers in general, wife, before we actually get into it?
No, I want to go into it. I want to get there. I'm excited.
And here we go. So we're going to go not in the order that they were revealed, but instead by the card number, which I don't have any Lightseekers cards in front of me right now. This would have been good to prep beforehand, but I don't recall there being set numbers, like card numbers.
There were not.
So
I know there were not, because I remember us asking Benny about that at one point.
Yeah, so it's something that maybe I missed in Wave 3, but we're going to go by these numbers down in the bottom right-hand corner, so that way everybody following along with the bouncing ball at home can know what we're talking about. So the first one up is Jaded Diplomat.
Yes, it is. That big chubby owl.
Yep, so it's a solar card, so it's an attack, 3 damage. If your last discarded card is a kreebal, you may move 1 kreebal from your deck to your hand, and it's a Chimchu. A Chimchu, like a member of the Chimchu family. Mm-hmm. Which, the art kind of gives that away. So, let me turn it over to you first, wife. So, are you excited by this card? Does this immediately bring something to mind, or are you, waiting for more information?
Well, I'm waiting for a little bit more information, but um, this being said, there are a lot of kreebals like overall in this release, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm excited to make a kreebal centric deck. I don't know which way I'm going to turn with these kreebals, but it is something to show. In fact, I think it technically this card is the only one of the 7 that does not have a kreebal or a kreebal-esque item in the artwork.
Yeah, all the other ones I believe, and we'll get through them, are actually kreebals. This one just
They aren't all actually kreebals.
Yes, you're correct.
There's a kreebal somewhere in the picture, with the exception of this one.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I believe you're correct on. So this one, and again, because we don't, it's tough to judge these because we don't have enough information about, okay, is this set going to be all about kreebals, or are these 7 cards literally the only
cards?
Yeah, these are the only kreebal interactions that we're going to see. Which, if they are, they're still pretty decent, and we'll talk about as we go through each of them. So, to highlight some of the ones available to Astral, there are a handful of cards that are actually kreebal, so things that you could use with this, notably Gravity Meddler and Impatient Scholar. Now, to me, those are the biggest ones, but there are some neutral options such as Unruly Mob, Kreebal Decoy, Kreebal Monk. I mean, Frenzied Kreebal is going to go the way of the dodo, but bottom line is that you do have some options that are respectable kreebals, and by that I mean you're not going to feel awful sleeving them up.
Yeah.
There's some cards where it's, this is a little janky, but it accomplishes a goal. There are other cards where it's, I am almost embarrassed to put them in decks.
Yeah.
And this one, so I like this one because, let's say it was deal 3 damage, draw a card. We've seen that on other things like, say, Corrupted Spirit. There are a bunch of examples. That's not great, but because this allows you to search your deck for a very specific thing, now I'm forever going to be on the lookout of, okay, is this a one-of kreebal that I can run that is now a silver bullet? So, for example, Kreebal Saboteur is a neutral kreebal that your damage to other heroes bypasses rotation amount of damage reduction. So it's 3/3/3. So basically you bypass 3 damage reduction on the 3 corners. I can't imagine that I'm going to be running that main deck, but there is the potential that if you needed to bypass a whole bunch of damage reduction, you could tutor for it. Similar things like Kreebal Decoy, our old friend Kreebal Jester, although he's going to be going away. There are a few different things that Unruly Mob, like I had already mentioned, is great, and something that a more defensive-minded build will want to make sure that they see, but you don't necessarily want to run a full complement of.
Yeah.
So if you can stick enough kreebals in there, you can go find it. What were you going to say, wife?
I was just going to say that, and also the luxury of not having to have multiples is really nice with this, because you get to go tutor for it. So it's the Jaded Diplomat is the Blacksmith of kreebals.
And I think that I don't want to undersell, or oversell for that matter, but we may be underselling the power of the tutoring. So because you're not required to run extra copies, and it's, again, to use Unruly Mob as an example, Unruly Mob is something you really, 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 really want to see against aggro, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously. But it's virtually dead against any kind of mid-range or control build. So therefore, it sounds like Harley's very upset. You may or may not hear our puppy in the background.
Yes, it does.
So distractions aside, if you need to see Unruly Mob, but you don't necessarily want to run a full complement, this is your potential answer. Now, it does obviously drive you to running a certain build of deck, but I don't think right now, if you get a couple other playable kreebals, aside from the existing ones, I mean, in this set, and I fully anticipate that we're going to get a whole lot of family support. I have no basis for that, but I assume they're going to push the mechanic further.
I feel like they would.
We should be able to at least come back to this later on and say, hey, this is potentially worthwhile.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's an attack actually hinders it. I expect that we're going to, since things like Exterior Defender are going to get retired and things along those lines, I fully anticipate that we're going to see replacement anti-attack cards.
I can't imagine we're not going to see anti-attack and even like anti-defend cards come back just like they did before.
In some form, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they may not be as strong as they were in the past, but who knows? But yeah, I can't imagine we're not going to see at least something comparable.
Now, right now, I don't particularly see anything off the top of my head that I care about it being this card being a Chimchu. I mean, yes, it's another Chimchu card, but because it's a cross-family card, it now... I don't think you're going to be able to, unless we see something else, going to be able to swing both synergies, is where I'm going with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to be one or the other.
I mean, it's entirely possible, but right now I'm going to assume not. I do appreciate the artwork, though. The artwork's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So any other thought? Oh, go ahead.
I want to know what's around his neck, but other than that...
Around his neck?
Yeah, he's got that, like, purple, like, muff sort of thing going on.
Well, I assume it's, like, the back of it's a cloak or something, because it kind of looks like it wraps around his hips there and over his leg.
Oh, yeah.
I assume it's just a very fancy cloak.
I'll buy it.
So, any other thoughts on Jaded Diplomat before we move on?
I have no other thoughts on him other than he is funny to look at.
So our next one up is Kreebal Sorceress, which spawned a million memes.
Yes.
It's a poison buff. What? Go ahead.
Here's my question about the memes. Almost all of them have her cooking chicken instead of pig, and I'm confused.
I think the intent is pretty obvious. Like, let's not dissect the memes too much. Like,
but it was like, all right. Anyway,
so Kreebal Sorceress,
this bugged me.
Poison buff. Instead of discarding, store kreebal cards under this card, up to 3. If 3 are stored, deal 2 damage to your target at the start of your turn. This can't be returned. So initially, I like this. My first thought was, oh, hey, if there are enough viable kreebal cards, I'll play it in Grimace. Because Grimace, I feel, is just a few poison buffs short. At the same time, this feels like a lot of effort for something that you could actually get off a different kreebal card, which is Kreebal Infiltrator.
Yeah.
So Kreebal Infiltrator is neutral, and it's just deal 2 at the start of your turn if your opponent has 5 or more cards in their hand. Or excuse me, if they have more than 5 cards in their hand, which anybody who's played more than a few games of Lightseekers, yeah, there's a whole bunch of decks that do that.
Yeah.
This, again, depending on the Kreebals we get, maybe, but right now, dealing 2 to them is fine. And again, Grimace wants some additional buffs. It does have the advantage of being unable to be returned, so Grimace now has sort of double protection on this. Since he prevents things from being removed, specifically poison buffs. But it sounds like you're not too thrilled by this card, wife.
Like you said, it's a lot of work for 2 damage. I mean, at the start, I guess it's 2 damage at the start. I don't know. I agree with you. It seems like a lot of work. It's the whole storing cards under other cards thing is never going to be my forte.
Well, the only time
that could be my personal bias against it.
Well, we have seen it function well, and that was at Nationals with the looping lock deck.
With the loop, and that's probably the other reason I'm having some flashbacks of horror to that deck, and I'm like, do I really want to store it? Like, I watched other people do that, and it was just frustrating. I don't know if I want to do that.
Now, here's the thing. So right now, a lot of the things that are kreebal that I would want to run are buffs. There's, like I said, we mentioned Kreebal Jester earlier, but we're talking Unruly Mob, we're talking Kreebal Monk, we're talking either Kreebal Potion Master, Kreebal Saboteur out of the board, hypothetically, Kreebal Decoy, all buffs. Yes, they'll rotate out eventually, but again, it feels like you got to put in a lot of effort. For something like this, I want to play kreebals that I'm going to play out of hand. So I play this, I play a kreebal. We got one under there. Next turn, I play 2 kreebals. Great. We powered it on. Then my opponent just removes it, and I'm like, I sure hope those kreebals were worth it, because this card is probably never going to do any damage.
Yeah.
That being said, I mean, maybe if we, again, other kreebal cards that could show up, obviously could change that. Also, if we get things that could consistently buff the damage on this, maybe, again, Grimus is always always on the lookout for additional poison buffs. I'm not super thrilled by this one, despite being initially excited.
Yeah, I'm not. I think it's too much work and too much could go wrong, personally.
It's so easy for your opponent to accidentally blow this up, because it's like, oh, well, I play this. So if you only play this out to try and bait removal, you have to invest a lot of effort, both in deck building and actions, to get it online to even remotely be a threat. And then your opponent could just go, okay, I'll take 2.
Yeah.
And if you play out other things, so it's either a decoy or just to flood the board or whatever, your opponent could accidentally blow it up and just go, oh, well, I'll destroy that thing. Oh, and I guess Cabal Sorceress.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. I'm not excited by this one, at least right now.
Yeah, we'll see what there is in the future.
Yeah. Now, of note, it is a non-rotating buff, which is always something that catches my eye, because there are a number of things that say, oh, well, if you have more buffs than your opponent, do thing. And maybe there's something there, but we'll see. Any other thoughts for Cabal Sorcerer's Wife before we move on to our next culprit? Our next victim?
I think that pretty much covers it, except for, posting the memes all the way.
All the memes.
Yeah.
So, actually, I have another thought about this. The very first thing that I thought of when I saw this artwork, Wife, was not the memes. I mean, I saw the memes almost immediately following, because they're everywhere. But the first thing I thought of was Clash of the Titans. And the scene in the swamp.
And now I can't not think of it either.
You'll never unsee it from this card. Anyway, moving on. So, our next one is a kreebal.
Yes, and it is.
Tantruming kreebal. He's angry.
He is angry. So I want to talk about him.
Okay, so let me give everybody the rundown. It's a crystal defend card. As I said, it is a kreebal, as compared to our last one that had no family. That sounded different in my head. That sounded so different in my head. Anyway.
So sad.
So Tantruming kreebal says discard up to 5 crystal cards from your hand. Damage your target and draw cards equal to the number of cards discarded. You sounded very excited, so take it away, Wife.
I am excited. All right, so one of my frustrations with this game in particular, because there is an inherent draw, is when you draw a bunch of jank and it's going to take longer to draw through the same number of cards that you don't want to have in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I like this mechanic. I like any mechanic that's going to let you go through your deck faster. That's my personal play style. I like being able to be like, okay, this is crap. Let's get the next 5. Okay, here we go. And the added bonus that it does damage is nice. Now, yes, it's just crystal cards, but it's almost like you're playing poker. I don't like these 3. Give me 3 new ones.
That's a good analogy.
I like it. I like it personally.
This is another one I wasn't a fan of. So, and maybe it's play style, like you said. So,
and this is our biggest difference in play style, I would say.
Well, I don't have a problem.
Every game.
I think this mechanic is worthwhile. I think it may be too. So I don't have a problem with the card in a vacuum, I guess, which is not really the best way to describe it, and also not a good way to judge cards anyway. But my issue with this card is I feel it may be too restrictive. So let's say 3 cards. This plus 3 cards is average. Air quotes.
Mm-hmm.
how often do you have 3 completely unplayable cards and you want to do 3 damage instead of just drawing 2 cards? So you would be down, you would lose this card and an
Yeah.
action, obviously. So there is an advantage in that you could see the cards right now and then get to play one of them, hypothetically. So that is an advantage over it. But I'm struggling to think of, again, to like we were talking about with the card we started out with, the Chimchu, that you could play silver bullets. So it's, oh, well, I have a bunch of X, Y, and Z in my hand that are crystal. They're only good in matchups D, E, and F. So you know what? They're not good here against Q. I'm going to pitch them. Go find something that's good. And by the way, I'm also going to do some damage. It's notable that it's defend damage, which is getting increasingly rare.
Yeah.
But I'm not super enthused to, like, okay, well, I have to draw up to 5 cards to then pitch them all, go find something else. It feels like there's an engine here, you know, like feed your graveyard to go do something else. But I'm not seeing it yet. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, but that's another thing. Like, if there's ways to support it, like, if there are crystal cards that come out later that say, when you discard this card, do XYZ.
Oh, absolutely.
That'll be incredibly exciting. But even just ignoring that, like, very remote possibility, I would say this is just kind of a play style thing for me where, okay, these cards aren't really going to get it done. I know the answer is coming up. The answer that I need is coming up. Let me pitch these and go get the answer.
But even in that scenario, so let's say you're playing, because I'm assuming you're alluding to scenarios with aggro decks. So let's say you're playing an aggro deck, right? Mm-hmm. How often do you have 3+ cards in your hand that don't just say deal damage? That you can just, you know, play right now and then Umbron and form it to replace them. Granted, Umbron is getting eroded, but still.
I mean, that's fair.
I feel like this is a combo piece looking for a combo, because in my personal opinion, I think Earth has been for the longest time the strongest mountain element. Yeah. You have access to everything you want except buff removal, and then you go, oh, well, I'll play Crystal and get buff removal. Now, I love a lot of the Crystal cards, so Mountain Breaker is one of my favorite cards out of the most recent set, but they just don't do, like, I don't know. I had tried to build Crystal-centric things, and I'm like, oh, but I also need Boulder Feast. Oh, I also need Mountain Fort. Oh, I also need this. I also need that.
That's true.
And it feels as though
the shopping list is too long.
Yeah, and you just run out of room. So I don't know. Again, we're going to have to wait to see the remainder of the set. I'm keeping an open mind about this one, but right now I'm not seeing it.
I think that's fair. I'm excited about it, but I think I'm probably putting the cart before the horse a little bit too much with it.
Well, we'll see. We will find out.
Yes, we will.
So the next one I'm actually really excited about, and that's Mossfoot Beast Tamer. Well, there are a lot of reasons for this, and a lot of people have already pointed out a number of them. This is a Beast Defend. It is also a kreebal, and it's rotate one of your Beast buffs 1 step forward, then restart it. Which, having played a whole lot of Sun Hunter Tuktu or Tuktu, or however you say her name, anytime that it says restart or walk a buff backwards, I start listening.
Yeah.
And tell me this card is not good. Tell me this card is not good.
I'm not going to tell you that because I'm not stupid.
This card seems crazy.
Yeah.
So we'll look at its simple scenario. So say you play Vicious Scalefang. It's 2x4. So it comes in, deals 2. It rotates. You play this, you deal 4, you restart it, deal 2. So now you've done 8 across 2 cards, which is not great, but you can burst someone with a defend in a buff deck, which I think is important.
Yeah.
The only negative, well, maybe not only negative, but one of the negatives about this is because it only restarts 1. So it can be, because you're investing a card and investing an action, it's, again, from experience playing Sun Hunter, you feel fine when you have Gravity Meddler. You feel fine with Yukona Archaeologist, because either they don't cost you a card or you can use it multiple times and get additional value out of it. When you have to invest the card, so playing, what the hell's that card called? Is it Spine Bark or Spine Back Forager, whatever the recent
like that,
beast one where it's an attack that's deal 2, restart 1 buff. Like, that doesn't feel great, but this lets you trigger those late corner buffs and then get the value back. Like, to me, I feel like this is going to see play. Farapang feels like it's right on the verge before. I feel like this is obviously going to go in that deck.
Yeah, and I think I'm excited to see what happens with Farapang. And I think you're right. This is going to go in there, and I think that might make him a little nutsy.
Well, I mean,
in a good way.
Well, I think Farapang's biggest issue right now is there aren't enough good buffs, among other things. Like, he obviously doesn't have great heals, he doesn't have great damage reduction. He already had access to, or it already had access to, buff restarts, so this isn't necessarily introducing something he didn't have access to, it's just a better one. So it's not shoring up the holes, but it is upping some of the value.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where this shows up. If there are other beast buffs, which surely there will be, that make me happy, which, again, I'm sure there will be, this card is going to pair with them very nicely. Like, out of all of them so far, this one excites me the most.
I can see that, though. I think there might be one that trumps it pretty soon, but we'll see.
So, moving on from there, we have our Storm Kreebal, which is actually just revealed today.
Yep.
It is Sparkback Channeler, so it's a clunky buff, which, again, is something that is important to note. It's unique. When you play a combo, you may move up to 2 different action buffs you used as payment into play, and it has 2 corners. So you could hypothetically get 4 buffs.
Yeah.
That will never happen.
No, it never will.
Let's be real. That will never happen.
I honestly think you'll be lucky if it happens once, but yeah.
Well, if it happens once, so wife and I were talking about this offline as we were prepping for the show. I don't like these cards in general. By these cards, I mean ones that say, when you play a combo or when you combo, do X. Most of them have been really bad.
Yeah, and the ones that are decent immediately get dealt with, so what was the point to begin with in the first place?
Or it's, so I've seen, for example, Suspicious Squid. It's when you play a combo, you mill them for 2. Okay, yes, that makes sense in a mill deck, and Storm has access to mill-related tools. My answer is, or response is, who cares? Like, yes, mill is a viable strategy. Yes, everybody remembers that game where, well, if they didn't mill those 2 cards off of it, but mill works in mass quantity. So you milling 2 random cards, who cares? And then they'll remove it again, kind of like some of the other things we were talking about earlier. Remove it by accident. You probably don't even have any other decent targets. However, this one, because it essentially says you get 2 extra actions, and it also, because naturally the biggest drawback of combos is it chews up your hand.
This is true.
So this is, you're still shredding your hand, but you're getting the value of those buffs, and depending on what they are, you could do some really mean things. So, for example, you combo, drop a Thunder Slug and something else into play, wreck their board, do whatever the combo is, and set yourself up for your next turn.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are the really awesome plays, and I think that they can happen. I just think, I don't know. I mean,
don't get me wrong. I'm not like...
I both like this card. Like, I think when it works, it'll be fun. I don't see it working very often.
Well,
I don't don't see it sticking long. I don't see it sticking around long enough to work. So,
Well, let's again say so. To walk through the scenario, you need to play this. So let's
yeah.
say you play this and draw, because you just run it out there. You then combo the next turn. You need to play 2 buffs that your opponent isn't just going to immediately... So here's the thing, is your opponent could very easily just go, oh, you played 2 buffs. I'll remove them.
Yeah.
And this, they don't have to remove this thing because, A, when you play a combo, you could whiff. You may not have action buffs to move. Obviously, you're going to try and set that up. So, yes, that is true. But what happens if those buffs need to be really impactful and immediately impactful, because they may not make it to it's 2 turns worth of waiting. Play this, combo next turn, then the buffs go off, unless you have something that takes effect immediately, like Thunderslug.
Yeah.
So I'm not hugely excited for this thing. I feel that it may be the best example of this particular, I don't want to call it a mechanic, but this particular theme.
Yeah. I think it's the best of what it is. I'm just not particularly fond of what it is, if that's a way to say it.
Yeah, they also don't... This do thing when combo happens theme isn't incredibly synergistic as far as, having not thought about it a whole lot, like I said, the spoiler came out today, is Suspicious Squid was the other one that came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
What does this do with Suspicious? They don't help each other much, other than oh, I comboed, I'll play 2 Suspicious Squids. Well, okay. Oh no, there has to be 2 different action buffs, so it can't even... I don't know.
It can't even be the same, so...
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not super thrilled by this one.
Yeah, this one's medium to middling.
So, the next one up is Kreebal.
Yes, it is.
So this was actually the first reveal. So you take it away, wife. Do you like this one?
Well, I like it because of the card that you found that went with it, and I feel like you should, since you thought of it. I mean, you're not the only one who thought of it, but
yes. Well, come on, wife. Give me some credit. I know I wasn't. In fact, I said it to a bunch of people the day that the card was spoiled, and that's Careless Mechanic. So I've actually been playing online a whole bunch of machine and robot focused decks. Personally, I think Robot Factory has a lot of potential. So with them on my mind, this immediately, it said, oh, well, this goes right in. Just get it in there. Whether it ends up being there, I don't know, because again, you have to play Kreebals before it even does anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's going to get there. Again, it's going to be contingent on, well, do we see a whole lot of Kreebals that matter? There are ones that clearly pair with it in faction, or in order, which is, namely, Careless Mechanic. So Careless Mechanic is a Kreebal. It's take 1 damage, restart all of your machines and robot buffs. So, okay, well, I'll play it when you get it rotated once. You play Careless Mechanic, it'll rotate, tag them for 7, and then restart it.
Yeah.
Seems good. Again, I don't know if that's going to be enough. I don't know if there are going to be enough Kreebals. I've been playing...
go
ahead.
That's definitely it's a fun thing to have happen.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, I think definitely in this new meta, is that enough to actually carry you someplace? Because I think before, in the meta that we're coming out of, everything was so explosive so quickly that, I mean, 7 sounds like a lot of damage. It is a lot of damage, but even then we're like, but it's not 45 damage at once, so maybe I don't care
any
about
of
it
the
that much.
tons of combo decks that just one-shot you, essentially, or manage to combo you out.
Yeah,
so
I think part of it is we have to see what is to come without those decks. But I always... Orange is my faction, which is hard for me to say because I love Storm, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I like the explosive cards.
I mean, this
they
one...
have them.
7 is important, but I still think you need multiple uses out of it before this one really gets there. At least, like I said, speaking from experience from playing a bunch of these buff-centric resetting type decks, you really want to be hitting for 7 multiple times with each use, because you don't have the quantity of damage output. So you naturally are going to have the potential to get there. I mean, every deck has that goal. But as compared to, say, an aggro deck where I'm playing multiple deal 6s or deal 6, deal 5, next turn do it again.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that this sticks, meaning it because it's vulnerable to buff removal. It has to hit play, it has to stick, it has to go off, and you probably need to do it again because given that you're playing a mid-range or control deck, you just don't have the damage density throughout your cards. So each of your action damage cards has to count. And I don't know yet, because looking at the existing kreebals, again, there are some interesting ones. We talked about Careless Mechanic. If you go out of faction, things like Gravity Meddler would be interesting. The various anti-kreebals, where it's Kreebal Monk or Kreebal Decoy, etc. Unruly Mob to help against the aforementioned aggro, but there aren't a whole lot of kreebal attacks or specifically defends outside of Careless Mechanic that I'm super excited to play. Yes, there are some. But I'm not, let me build this kreebal list and this is going to be the focal point. This one really needs some help. Not that the other ones don't, but it's interesting. I do appreciate the cross-family interactions that we've seen on a number of these cards. My primary issue with it is that from what I've seen so far, it's tough to actually make that happen. You end up diluting it and you can't accomplish either goal.
Yeah, it's either you put way too much into it to try to make it work and then nothing works, or it just doesn't, it only somewhat does what it needs to do.
And you potentially run into just the inconsistency problem of, I drew all my kreebal support, but I really needed my Chimshu support, or I needed this, or, I needed the robots, or there are a bunch of pitfalls that are inherent to building the decks that way. So unless it gets some help, so say a cross-faction hero that specifically does certain things, or every card counts as a kreebal, or something like that, it's going to be tough. So moving from Kreebot, we have Awestruck Tourists,
which is the greatest artwork of all of the ones that have been released so far. Personal opinion.
Is it?
I love it. It's so cheesy. I love it.
It is kind of funny.
So if you ask me to envision a kreebal, this is pretty much the image that I would come up with. So that's why I like it.
Okay. So Awestruck Tourist is our neutral kreebal card here. It's clunky buff, so again, it's something that is notable. It's 1-1-1-3. So corners 1 to 3, so the 3-1 corners are you heal for rotation whenever you play a location. On the last corner, you draw rotation cards when you play a location card. So basically, if you play 4 locations with this out, you will heal 3 and then draw 3.
Yeah.
I have also been playing a lot of location decks, so this one immediately perked my interest. I don't know if I'm going to play it. I'm not sure. 3 healing is not a lot. Even in a location-based deck, yes, it triggers off the locations, but it's not a location itself. I mean, tourists are not a location. They go to locations. And I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to get to corners 2 or 3, and then your opponent's going to pop it, is what I think is going to happen. Now, if you can live the dream, so the way I picture this is going to go, so you play a location, rotate to 2. Then you location, rotate to 4. But you basically have to set up that sequence or your opponent's going to get it. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously they have to have the buff removal, and if you're playing locations, you probably have a gazillion buffs in play. Although notably, this doesn't care that it's a location buff. It just cares that it's a location.
Which that isn't. Honestly, I think if it was a location buff, then this card would be essentially unplayable. I mean, not completely unplayable, but I think it would be a lot weaker than what it is.
Well,
so I think it's good that it's just locations.
Now, we are going to be losing a whole bunch of locations. So, for example, Old Oak, which is an Awakening card.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because a lot of the cards, when you say, oh, it's a location, oh, it's a kreebal, oh, it's an Umbron, it's a this, or that, it makes sense. And Old Oak, if I told you it's a location, it probably makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just that the family icon was missing. I would have never, if I just thought about Old Oak, I wouldn't have conjured to mind that it's a location. But now that I know it is, I remember it.
Yeah.
Beyond that, Assassin's Guild is a notable location card. It's a defend. I'm calling out ones that are not specifically buffs.
Mm-hmm.
Crystal Maze, but it's getting an errata to be nerfed a little bit. There are a number of other really good ones, such as Focus Chamber, Old Oak, that are rotating.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, Sunbeacon, off the top of my head, I believe it's getting errata and will be legal again. I think is how it's going to work.
I think so.
I know it has an errata in the app, and I believe that will make it legal again when that goes into effect with Uprising. If that's the case, that's another one. Beyond that, I love card draw. So I think this is probably good enough to get played. But I'm not going to feel great playing it simply because the amount of investment.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's pretty much how I feel. Like, unless you're playing something very specific, I feel like you have to put a lot of extra effort into this.
I mean, right now, let's face it, you're not playing a location deck outside of Mountain.
Heals. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're not playing this for a whopping 3 heals, unless there's, something that buffs it, and even then it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there is the potential, so let's say you have a hero that says when you heal, do something relevant. Mm-hmm. You could play a location, immediately trigger it. But the assumption here, again, is that I think you must have 3 other locations in hand right now when you play this. Because you must follow this up with... And here's part of the other issue, is that most orders have a remove 2 buffs card, right? Crystal Leech, Shadow Puppet, etc. Your opponent is naturally going to try and get the most value out of those, as you would. So where I'm going with this is that your opponent's not going to pop this immediately if you were to just run it out there naked and not follow it up with a location. Mm-hmm. So by you playing this and another location, it just says, please Crystal Leech me.
Yeah.
Because now they're getting the 2 for 1, which may be fine. Eventually, they are only going to have so much buff removal, and a lot of locations are buffs. So it has a little bit of self-protection in that it's redundant that way. Mm-hmm. I guess the more I talk about it, the more I'm talking myself into this card, but I've gone through cycles of that back and forth where it's like, when I first saw it, I said, oh, this is really cool. You get to draw 3 cards. It shouldn't be that difficult to do. And then it's, oh, well, they're probably just going to remove it. And most of the time, your locations, you can, like a mountain fort, they can chew through so they don't have to remove those. And then, this other thing, I'm interested to see, because the location deck I was playing was pseudo combo centric. It wasn't like one hit KO combo, but it was based around Crumbling Tower in Edda. Mm-hmm. So that you can reset it a bunch of times. Again, more reset decks. Buff resets specifically. I like the idea of this. I think I will probably end up playing it right now. I would just have to find room.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea of it. I want to see what locations come out in this set
Well,
before I decide
there are a
how I
lot of
feel.
good locations already. So aside from the ones that we were talking about, and we'll look just at standard ones. Again, they're mostly going to be red, but neutral we have Colossi Skybeam. You have Enchanted Soil. You have Mountain Forts. You have Rickety Mines, which I thought were rotating, but they're not. You have Steadfast Beacon. Then if you go outside of that, Robot Factory, Skyward Observatory, Wall of Bones.
Yeah. I always forget Wall of Bones as a location.
That's another one that it's like, yeah, that makes sense. It's a wall. It's it's a place that you can go to, but it's still, it's not something that I immediately think of. And there are some other oddball ones, such as, like I said, I was running a reset build with Crumbling Tower, which is a location. And obviously we're going to get more. I think it's probably going to be you play this in Mountain, and then are there enough Mountain? Because otherwise you just don't have the quantity of playable. Again, to go back to what we had talked about earlier, you probably would be pseudo embarrassed to sleeve up some of these cards. Like, you're just not excited. You're like, I guess I can play this, but I don't really want to, and that's not how you should feel about cards in your deck.
Yeah.
Like, you should be excited every time you draw a card. You should be like, sweet, I got this thing. Not,
yeah. That's how it should be. That's not always how it works.
Well, and that's the thing. Like you said to what you were saying, wife, that it's going to be contingent on what else we see. I think there are enough locations that this could be a thing, but we'll have to play it by ear.
Yeah.
So that actually brings us all the way back to Jaded Diplomat. So, closing thoughts, wife? Any summation that you want to do on our initial set of previews for Uprising?
That I really hope this isn't all the kreebals that we get for this set, because I am excited about kreebal builds. I want to make sure there are more.
So that's
more ones that actually work.
It is something that is a concern when you do these sort of themes, is that, so if there isn't enough support, and this isn't just from a high competitive level standpoint, it's also even from a casual level where, let's say these were literally the only cards that are or mention kreebals in the entire set, which I doubt. Well, let's say that it is. I don't know if that's enough cards for me to even care in casual.
Yeah.
Like, just, I want to sling some cards. And that feels bad, because then it's, okay, there's effectively 7 less cards in the set.
Yeah. So, hopefully that's not the case, and we get more.
Yeah.
It's in my head, and for those of you listening, please forgive us, but we, as most of you know, we play a lot of the WoW TCG, and it feels like Death Knights a little bit. Like,
well, Death Knights early on.
Yeah,
they obviously got support over time.
That's what I meant. Like, Death Knights, when they were first released, like, oh, here's all this cool stuff, but it doesn't actually work because there's just not quite enough there.
Well, that's kind of how the family theme.
Kind of what I'm hoping.
That's kind of how the family theme felt initially. Is like, oh, we're so close, and now we have that follow-up set where they can put a little more meat on the bones, and that this way that there are going to be more cards to fit the themes. And that's another potential pitfall, is that, okay, well, yeah, we have a whole bunch of kreebal cards, but half, not half, like 10% want to do this, and 30% want to do that, and 5% want to do this, and that, and this idea, and that idea, and it's all over the place, and therefore they are so non-cohesive, which I guess kind of seemingly fits kreebals, that, which I've been a bad Lightseekers player. I have not kept up on the lore. So I don't know if Uprising is going to be, in general, kreebal themed, simply because, like, I could see, oh, well, it's the kreebal Uprising. I don't know if that's a thing in the lore or not. It would be cool.
It would be cool. I think we both have some research that we need to do, because real life has taken its toll, and we missed looking up that information.
Yeah, so I know there is a cool YouTube series that I think one of the PlayFusion team members puts together regarding all of the lore. So I do want to check that out. I have not had the opportunity yet. But we'll see if we can get that in before our next show. We do plan on just to start wrapping things up, we do plan on doing these in batches so that we have a bunch of cards to talk about. I think it's more interesting that way. You have a lot more context, and then that way we can also talk about whatever news is going on in the Lightseekers world. So, again, we're going to try and also stream more. I do want to play more Lightseekers, to be perfectly honest. I kind of wanted to wait until Uprising. I may jump in before then, but I'm bouncing back and forth personally because bottom line is, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. Bottom line is that the formats, physical versus digital, are so different right now that it's difficult for me to determine what to play.
Yeah, it definitely makes it a lot harder, I feel like.
Yeah, so, and that's something that will be going away in the near future. Once we get this set, everything's going to try and consolidate, and then everybody will be happy, right? That's how it works, right?
That's always how it works.
Everyone will be happy. There will be no one that will be upset.
No one will complain on the internet. And if you believe that, I got some swampland to sell you.
Yeah, I got a few bridges as well. But we are really excited in general, both for the future for Lightseekers and also this set. So, aside from all of that, wife, any other thoughts that you wanted to throw in, either about Lightseekers in general, these specific reviews, our future plans for Lightseekers, etc., anything?
Just that I also want to keep playing more Lightseekers. I'm really excited to hopefully get out and play some more physical again. And not that I don't like the online component, but I like going to stores. So,
yep.
And I'm excited to see what comes. And if anybody has anything that they want to see, or if we're streaming and you want to see a certain deck tried out, believe me, we probably have the cards.
Oh,
unless
yeah.
It's from this particular
Yeah, Uprising obviously would be a little bit of a challenge at this stage. But if it's from any of the other sets, I'm sitting almost on a throne of Lightseekers cards because of, all the various tournaments that we played in and performed pretty well in. Hashtag humble brag.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah. Well, wife, you're in on this too. You top 8 in the Nationals.
We both did well, and because of that, we have lots of stuff.
Yeah, so...
So we're excited to hopefully turn that stuff into more stuff.
Yep.
And then more stuff, and then we won't be able to enter into our basement ever again.
Well, I mean, it's already kind of there, not just because of Lightseekers. But anyway, we do want to do more Lightseeker stuff, like wife is saying. If you want to reach out to us, feel free to hit up the contacts down towards the bottom. You'll see Twitter down there. We're going to have all of our other contacts in the show notes. Reach out to us if you want to see certain content or anything like that. Whether it happens to be written, we're going to try and get this out both on YouTube as well as SoundCloud. Again, I'm not sure exactly what the schedule is going to shape up for this, but we'll play it by ear and hopefully we can keep the ball rolling on this. So I guess with that, I'm husband.
And I'm wife.
And tune in next time for more Random Thoughts.